So all the people that were waiting for us about half an hour ago have all decided, bugger this. I'm going to go and make my coffee or make dinner or have breakfast or go and do something because these guys are always late.
Well, Chuck Berry was always Guns N' Roses.
Thank you.
Fashionably late. Fashionably late.
Fashionably late.
Fashionably late.
Especially Axel.
He was renowned for it, wasn't he? Not turning up, yes.
Yeah.
I had a couple of girlfriends that used to be fashionably late too. I'd always get angry with them.
Oh, yeah, especially women, eh?
Good morning, Sonia.
Hey, there might be a woman watching. Oh, there is. There's Sonia. Hello,
Sonia. You see? Careful with that accent, Eugene.
Cheers, everybody.
Oh, dear. Welcome to the technological nightmare that is. That's weird, isn't it?
If your mic's ever crack, guys, crackle and you can hear hissing and pissing about, go and reinstall your driver and look what happens. We're back. We're back on board. Half an hour late, though.
Well,
late than never.
Good morning, Mr. Brad. How you doing? Good. Cook is in the house.
Yeah. So Brad, this is Carl, and he does mobile cam for us. You see, that's Carl cam.
Carl cam.
Just feeding the cat.
Oh, cat cam.
It's a swampy moving thing.
Cat cam.
While he feeds the cats and sells houses whilst moving about. Multitasking.
All right. So today, I'm actually a little bit excited. So obviously,
you can't say that on the internet.
I said excited. What were you? What did you thought I said?
Excited. I'm going excited.
I know that you guys have been covering a lot of the, which has been, I've sneak peeked a few of the shows, the Blues and the Erics and the Creams and but this Bob Dylan will be a revelation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, you guys can kick it off then.
Should we kick off with the bare facts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Andrew and I have discussed this before. I mean, I have his albums. I don't know much about him. I do know of his amazing depth. I've actually written some notes about sort of like what he means to me as far as.
I bought some exhibits.
Oh, nice. And I'd like to touch on. We could probably do that towards the end of the show. Of the amazing songs that he's written that other bands or individuals have covered.
Yeah. Mm.
And you'd never know as a Bob Dylan song because the other person made it so great. But the great thing is Bob Dylan wrote it. So Bob Dylan, it's just, yeah. But anyway, Simon, I don't know much about him.
Oh, well, let's start with the bare facts. He was born in Duluth, Minnesota in 1941. Born Robert Allen Zimmerman. There we are. But raised in Hibbing, Minnesota. His father, Abraham Zimmerman, part of the close-knit Jewish community of Duluth. And we know they lived until Dylan was 6. And then they moved back to his mother's hometown, Hibbing, Minnesota, which is just up the road, where they lived for the rest of his childhood. And his father, they ran a furniture and appliances store in Hibbing for a while. So but in his early years, he had sort of fairly classic upbringing of listening to the radio and listening to blues and country stations from Shreveport, Louisiana. They are picking it up
Wow.
from Minnesota, and also, listening to rock and roll in his teenage years. And we'll come back to this, but he had bands in his high school, and he backed Bobby V when he came once, playing piano and stuff. So very much steeped in that rock and roll tradition. So that, in a sense, when we look at his thing, we've got what we see is that the folk thing was almost a diversion in a way, away from what he originally did.
Interesting.
Because originally that rock and roll thing. So when he returns to it, and they're going electric, actually to return to what he did when he was a teenager. When he was a kid and what he really was into. And not just decided to do something completely different. I mean, driven by other things as well. But so I think that that's really something to bear in mind. And in his yearbook, he carried the caption "Robert Zimmerman to join Little Richard." That was his ambition from school. Join Little Richard.
I think part of his appeal is he had such a broad a musical spectrum that he followed. You mentioned a bit of the country, Skip James, the blues, Woody Guthrie. There was a famous the Dust Bowl ballads. Oklahoma.
Woody Guthrie.
And so, and then you mentioned Little Richard and rock and roll. He was obviously queued up with the top 40. So basically, a bit like our musical heroes, your Keiths and your Elvises. They didn't listen to one genre. They soaked up as much as possible, and all through a radio.
For sure, absolutely. And I think that he that broad spectrum, has served him well through his career. No musical genres really have been out of bounds for him.
Because
we did like Sinatra stuff, didn't you? All that swing stuff recently. He did like 3 albums of jazz standards, swing standards, which is.
I mean, UB40, I'll Be Your Baby Tonight, a reggae band, and then Johnny Cash and June Carter with It Ain't Me, Babe, country, and then the Highway 61 Revisited, a bit of blues going on,
The great whistle at the beginning, yes. That's what I love about that. I love the whistle at the beginning. So just to cover it, he got his surname. He started to call himself Bob Dylan while he was playing at local coffee house in Hibbing, and he started spelling it Dillon. From Matt Dillon. That's where he got it from. Yeah, and then he saw the name Dylan Thomas on a book. In a bookshop, and then he decided to take the less common spelling of it. But
Zimmerman would have been a mouthful.
Zimmerman would have been a mouthful, but also, I mean, and this is a show somewhere. There's a show that Jewish people in rock, and Bob Dylan, Peter Green, of course, and also Bob Dylan's Neil Diamond, Bob Dylan's manager Albert Grossman. Was Jewish as well. So there's a there's a thread through that.
And then the whole the whole band, and Michael Bloomfield.
Yeah. See, so there's a definite
Al Cooper.
A seam, of that we could look at in a different thing. But I mean, you were talking about famously he visited Woody Guthrie in the psychiatric hospital where he was being treated for his Huntington's disease before he died. Woody Guthrie, Dylan turned up at the hospital and had a chat with him, kind of thing, because obviously he's one of his musical heroes, and he that drive to move into folk. I think he saw it as more of a serious thing. Rock and roll was not that serious. The lyrics weren't lots of declamatory stuff, but the folk thing it had more depth to it. There was more despair, sadness, whatever, embroiled in those lyrics that he saw and felt. Which is why he thought to move into it.
And that's pretty much the ultimate musicianship if you think about it. He's pretty naked. It's just him, his acoustic guitar, writing his songs, singing with no backing. That's pretty. That's naked. That's so transparent.
Yeah.
He can't rely on a guitar solo or a big
But
bass.
also,
Yeah.
I would say, cheap.
Oh, true. Yeah.
In a sense, you can travel around with it, which a lot of those guys did.
And that was
Rambling
part,
Jack Elliott and all of that.
That was part of his image too, wasn't it? That hobo image.
Yeah, the hobo image, which he never really did. But
beatnik was a word. Beatniks.
Yeah, beatniks. Yeah. Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg and all of that.
Catching trains.
How old was he when he left home, though? He left home at an early age, didn't he?
Well, he was in New York in 1960, so he would have been 19 years old.
Wow.
Well, amazing. I think we'll get onto this because one of the interesting things that is that what you kind of forget and what you have to bear in mind is he's like his first album comes out in 61, which is mainly covers and stuff like that. There's only a couple of originals, but I think best known for having the version of House of the Rising Sun, which he stole from Dave Van Ronk, which then was the basis of the Animals. Yeah, which goes back to Lead Belly. But he kind of got a version of it from Dave Van Ronk, but who's another New York blues folk singer. But then, of course, famously, that influenced the Animals. And then the Animals version influenced him.
The Animals turned it on its head with that amazing organ.
Yeah, organ and guitar and all of that. Yeah, electric guitar.
Oh, and what's his name? The singing, Alan Price. Eric Burdon's amazing impassioned vocals. Yeah,
but they got that chord arrangement from Dylan.
And there was a lot of nuggets on those first few albums. A lot of cover versions of blues songs and
the
country.
Yeah. So in my time of dying and stuff, which is something we can do. So appear somewhere else. Might get out tomorrow. But, so he moves to when he's 19. He moves to he drops out of college. Basically, he goes to college for a bit, but drops out. I think my memory is that one of the things he did was he stole somebody's record collection, left town with it.
on a train or in a car or a bus?
No. I don't think on a train. I don't know how he got to New York. I can't remember how he got to New York. But yeah, went off to New York with somebody else's record collection. Scamp. Thieving toe racket. But, it kind of, that's Bob Dylan's magpie instincts, isn't it? Collect stuff and things. And so obviously goes to New York and gets embroiled in the sort of the coffee house scene in New York, playing all those coffee houses that were there and mixing with people like Rambling Jack Elliott and Dave Van Ronk and Phil Oakes and various other people, Clancy brothers. So mixing with all those people and kind of, embroiled. And of course, he starts writing his own stuff and, he gets, is it Robert Shelton writes a review of him in the New York Times, and saying, and so his career kind of takes off on the back of, and other people recognized it. Other people recognized what a genius he was and what a legend, and what a songwriting talent he was going to be. And, but famously, he went and auditioned for John Hammond, at CBS Records to get his record thing.
Columbia
Records, that's right, yeah. And but his first album only sold 5,000 copies, and it's referred to as Hammond's Folly for a bit until but, he had support from people like Johnny Cash. Interestingly, way back then, even then in his first album, he had support from Johnny Cash.
Wow! So,
which proves the that people saw the worth in his talent and things, So then he records his first album of originals, which is the Freewheeling Bob Dylan.
Wow!
Great cover. Him and Susie Rotolo.
That's got that's blowing in the wind on there, is it?
So this has got Blowing in the Wind. It's got Masters of War on it. Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Classic.
This is a classic. I think the thing about this album was that it established him as that voice of a generation.
Wow.
Yeah. And also it established him as, so, you know, and it as a folk singer and as a protest singer, you know, and interesting, you know, writing about the civil rights movement, nuclear disarmament, etc.
Yep.
In a way, you know, and producing those, you know,
Because
fantastic.
I've written some bullet points when I think of Bob
Go on.
Dylan.
Yeah.
Poet, lyricist, storyteller, activist, influential on John Lennon, Mick Jagger, Bruce Springsteen, Jimi Hendrix, the band, rock culture,
yeah,
60s counterculture, and lastly, towards the end of his career, prophet and spiritual.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's it.
So, at what stage did he become a pop cultural icon? Because it just wasn't the music that people fell in love with. He was the epitome of cool, you know, that freewheeling Bob Dylan reputation that he had, and you know, to some extent, you know, it is true. You know, he did live rough for a little while, didn't he? You know, but obviously he
Not
wasn't
much.
jumping on the back of trains. You know,
I think what would have helped would have been his connections. You know, Columbia Records was a big label based in New York.
Okay, so how did he get onto Columbia? What is there someone responsible for that, or was it just a bit of luck on their behalf that they signed him?
No, he came to the notice of John Hammond, the guy who, same way, 10 years later signed Bruce Springsteen in the same way, and basically he went and auditioned in Hammond's office with his guitar, and Hammond obviously saw, you know, that there was a talent there. Something going on. So he signed him to Columbia Records and made his first album. And I think John Hammond produced it, but I mean John Hammond produced Free Willing as well. You know, but in those, you know, those days, you go into to make an album like that would take a day. You know, you go in and you play the songs maybe once, maybe twice, just make sure there wasn't any glaring mistakes. You know, as I said earlier, voice and acoustic guitar is pretty, you know, they're well recorded, but, you know, it's quite a simple thing to do. You know, we can whistle it through. But
and he would have been fascinating sorry, you go.
No, I just wanted to ask you guys a question. So his reputation was sort of built on those early albums. It wasn't as if he had a reputation before that, you know, from that's the impression I get. Am I correct in thinking that, or am I a little bit?
Well, that's right. He had a reputation from, remember, when he started doing the coffee houses. That's where he got his reputation by doing cover versions mainly, which is on his first album, and doing those bluesy kind of folky things and doing some Woody Guthrie and, you know, setting out his stall as a singer and as a performer. And then the songwriting starts to kick in, as I say, round this, you know, round Free William's second album, where, you know, he goes on this amazingly, you know, he's 20 years old, you know, he writes Blowing in the Wind, which is obviously a hit for Peter, Paul and Mary and not for him. But at this stage, he's still something of a cult figure in the, you know, because it's, you know, protest folk is still quite cultish, and he doesn't have any hits or anything like that, and doesn't become a pop star really until later. But you know, you can see that if you're going to write Blowing in the Wind, I mean, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall famously is said that every line of Hard Rain's Gonna Fall is the beginning of another song, kind of thing, you know. And for 20 years old I mean, it's difficult, I think, to really understand that, you know, somebody of 20 years old, I could not have even conceived of writing a song like that. He's 20 years old. I think it was because he was writing, you know, Blowing in the Wind when I was 20 years old, or, you know, but Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. I mean, he's, again, not a protest song, but a you know, love song kind of thing, you know, but an amazingly kind of mature and, you know, view of, you know, of that and the world, and amazing lyrics and amazing way of performing it as well. we forget performing as well as that.
I think that he would have been
all sorts of things.
He would have been fascinating to the intellectuals and the students and the professors. I mean, the master and the teacher. I think that he would have been definitely fodder, food for all the writers, magazine, the reviews. And the simple fact that music at that stage in the 50s was a lot of manufactured songwriting, teams and boards.
Absolutely.
Tin Pan Alley, even unfortunately Elvis got caught up with all that. Here's a hit, Elvis, go and sing it. Where Bob Dylan,
long as I get 50%.
Bob Dylan changed everything, and I get the impression it wasn't about the money for him. I mean, he still wanted to be paid. I mean, everybody needs a roof over their head, food in the fridge, and obviously petrol in the tank.
Yeah.
But I think my gut instinct that he was very mysterious, and that's what drew people into him.
Of course, what we have to remember is that this is, there's no internet, there's no anything, so you can invent a past for yourself. You can invent a hobo past for yourself. You can invent all sorts of things that aren't true, but no one really is going to find out because, as you say, Carl, so you can invent. It's not so much being mysterious; it's just you invent a whole kind of persona for yourself, and you're able to do that because nobody really, unless they wander off to Hibbing and go and find your mum and dad and kind of go, is he really? People are not doing that. They're just interviewing him and taking it all in, kind of thing.
And great album covers, spooky, sort of lonely.
Well, that's an iconic, isn't it? That's an iconic, iconic, beautiful, beautiful cover of a kind of fantastic New York.
Jumping ahead 10, 15 years, Bruce Springsteen, amazing songwriter, big Bob Dylan was one of his main influences, but Bruce channeled his father and the blue collar workers.
But when he first started, Bruce Springsteen, I mean, famously, Bruce Springsteen got signed to Columbia Records by going and auditioning for John Hammond.
Wow. And
he went and auditioned for John Hammond as a singer-songwriter. Right,
wow.
So he had all these songs. In fact, on his latest album, he does "If I Was a Priest" is from that time. But so he went and auditioned for John Hammond and got a recording, and then went and said, "Yeah, but I don't really do this. Really, I have a band." And then I had to kind of leave the band and, onto Greece and Raspberry Park and kind of having been signed as a...
And then he had to wait 10 years for him to do the album called, was it Nebraska, where he just him and the
he went back and it was just him again. Yeah, 1982 or something. Yeah, absolutely.
The money was already in the bank then.
Yeah. And interesting. I'm sorry, we're digressing on the Springsteen, but he's had a kind of, he's done 3 or 4 albums that are basically acoustic albums. The Ghost of Tom Joad is another one. What's it? Devils and Dust is pretty much another one, kind of thing. Yep. That is very much more him on his own, kind of thing. But
if I was a young guy, and me knowing me and me knowing what I like, if I was in England or maybe America, I would be busting through the doors to see the Stones or the Beatles or Little Richard or Muddy Waters or if I was in America, James Brown or Wilson Pickett or like black R&B acts. It takes a certain person or an individual to sit in a coffee house and really listen to the lyrics. I've touched on that a bit in Austin, Texas. There was, obviously coffee places and singer-songwriters. It's a big part, Steve Earle and Townes Van Zandt, all influenced by obviously Bob Dylan, but these are intellectuals who are really into the song, trying to analyze, I guess.
Completely, and I think that that if you take 1963. The Beatles are singing "I Want to Hold Your Hand." Dylan is singing "Don't Think Twice, It's All Right." And, you've only got to look at the lyrics to know that there is a chasm between what Dylan is doing, aged 20 years old, and what the Beatles are writing about. I'm not saying the Beatles are fantastic, in every way. But
Yeah.
that simplicity, I want to hold your hand, is not anywhere near what. And it's interesting how much Dylan influenced the Beatles, as they went through and stuff. And apparently, I read George Harrison said of Freewheeling, that they wore it out. They played it a lot, wore it out. The context of the song lyrics, and just the attitude. It was incredibly original and wonderful. Yeah, and it's and also I think that if you're doing voice and acoustic guitar, it showcases the lyrics. What are you doing to showcase the lyrics? I would say that the chordal structures are quite simple on these songs, good but simple. But and actually, so what you're actually doing is you are showcasing the lyrics, and it's amazing, really, that I think that kind of genius, age 20, that kind of ability to write those songs, age 20, and to be recognised as being part of that, the voice of a generation thing, clearly plugging into the zeitgeist of the times in a way that in a way and in a level that nobody else did. I mean, think of the other, the other protest singers, protest songs from that time. It all gets a bit niche straight after Dylan, really. There's not, I don't know if you've heard. Do you know Phil Oakes at all?
Yeah, Phil Oakes.
Yeah.
I'm done marching.
Yeah, that's right. I ain't marching anymore. Yeah.
That's it. He committed suicide. Yeah. He was another Jewish guy.
Yeah, but there was a lot of rivalry between the two of them. But and Phil Oakes is a good example of the protest singer, at the same time as Dylan. But you don't hear the name Phil Oakes bandied around in popular circles like you do with Dylan. Therefore, I've got a Phil Oakes record, but it is clear that Dylan's talent outstripped the rest of them by some distance.
Well, it took the Beatles, the Stones, and the Beach Boys up to 65, late 65, most definitely 66 and 67 to catch up to Dylan.
That's right. I mean, Norwegian Wood, I would say, was probably the first first Beatles song where you think, they've been listening to Dylan.
Yeah.
I thought it was I get high, I get high, I get high.
That's typical of you. Always back to the drugs.
No, because you had all that R&B, British rave up stuff, but all of a sudden they had some money in the bank. They sat down and like, we're sick and tired of these 2-minute songs with the screaming little girls, and let's actually write some songs. Hence the Rubber Soul's Revolver, a giant of an album, Smile, Pet Sounds, to a lesser extent, Aftermath, Between the Buttons, not quite there, but huge influence, massive.
Yeah, absolutely, and that you can't. I don't think you can.
The construct of a song. The construct of a song.
Yeah, the construct of a song, but also that without Dylan, without him, that almost nothing. He shoved and made other artists, up their game, change what they wrote about, change the view, what they did in a way that I don't think any other artist did. I think the Beatles did it in a different way, but lyrically, particularly, they got pushed by Dylan because, as I say, they were writing "I Want to Hold Your Hand." He was writing "Don't Think Twice, It's All Right."
Well, it took Leonard Cohen until 1967 to release his debut masterpiece.
Oh, I see. Yeah. But again, on the back of Dylan,
correct.
Dylan's released 7 albums by then.
These guys are fascinating because I was reading a little extract about Leonard Cohen's favorite books, and half his favorite books were books on poetry. So these guys are intellectual. They're reading about poetry, and stuff that's I can't fathom. I like autobiographies or instant news, but these guys are very deep people, eh? You almost get the feeling they're possibly bipolar, or they're definitely wired differently.
I think certainly wired different. I don't think Dylan's bipolar. I'm not.
Well, I'm
particular. I don't
just.
think anyone's ever said that, but I know what you mean. There's a
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how genius is. I mean, being that sort of genius, and I am going to use the G word for Dylan. I think that clearly that other aspect of his personality are not quite so developed as his songwriting personality. But. Because famously he said to Keith Richards, I could have written Satisfaction, you couldn't have written Desolation Row, kind of thing.
No, it was Tambourine Man.
Was it Tambourine? Was it?
Whatever.
And to be honest, probably true. But
he definitely would have had an ego.
Leave it, Bob. I mean, have you? I don't know. Have you watched Don't Look Back? You must have seen Don't Look Back. The D.A. Pennebaker tour movie of him in 65 in the UK. He's touring the UK in 65. His last solo acoustic tour, and he keeps there's a bit of an in joke in the thing that he keeps going around saying, "Who's this Donovan guy? Who's this Donovan guy?" Right? So because he keeps hearing the name Donovan is like the new Dylan or whatever, first in a long line of those, and they in the film they film it when he finally meets Donovan, right? So they meet in this room, and there's Bob and he's spoken for, and so play me a song. He plays him "Catch the Wind." Do you know the Donovan song "Catch the Wind"? Right, no. And you can see you get about 3 lines in, you can see Dylan going, "Yeah, that's no competition." You can see he relaxes in his chair, kind of sits back like Mr. Smuggo going, "I don't think that's any competition, frankly. If that's what you've got."
What about Hurdy Gurdy Man? That's pretty good.
That's pretty good, yeah. But later, of course, much later.
Okay, yeah.
John Paul Jones.
Oh no, Bob Dylan would definitely had an ego.
I've
come to the conclusion in sales and real estate, and I don't like it. That ego makes people, especially leadership and politics, and that it carries you forward in a narcissistic way.
But I think that all musicians of that, they've all got an ego, and they've all got and I think that in a sense, I don't mean this in a mean way, but if you're that good and you're that good, because clearly you are that good, that actually that's gonna that's a lot of things. It's quite a burden to carry if you're that good, and especially if it's a kind of mercurial thing that you can't, I mean, Dylan has said recently that he said recently that he doesn't know how he wrote those songs, and he doesn't know the person who wrote those songs. So in effect, what he does now is a completely different thing to what he did then. And he can't. He cannot get back in touch with the Bob Dylan that wrote "Blowing in the Wind" or whatever.
Maybe these guys are, and I suffer from this, where they overthink, and their outlet is putting pen to paper.
I don't think they did. I think Dylan didn't overthink. I think in "Don't Look Back," there's famously he spends all his time typing on a typewriter. Not knocking his shut. And if you move forward to something like Blonde on Blonde, they recorded in Nashville, the musicians would be hanging around in the studio playing pool and stuff, and Bob would be upstairs composing. He'd be knocking out those songs, and what he'd be doing was sticking a typewriter, typing out the lyrics, changing them a bit, knocking about, and then they would go downstairs at 2:00 in the morning or something and record them.
Wow.
Famously they did Visions of Johanna, and they start, I think, Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, I think, one of the two. Long, but they didn't know how long it was. So of course they start off, cut some lip,
Oh, wow.
and it's like then they suddenly realise there's another 4 verses. Chaps, keep there's a kind of because obviously you want to build up to a peak and these things, but it's quite difficult if you don't know how long the song is, and the chord structure, but you don't know how long it is. So you're kind of following along, famous Dylan, thing of not showing anybody and kind of, just getting on with first couple of takes and not worrying too much about if there's a mistake or two. But it's all about the performance. And clearly, he doesn't do 20 takes because he just gets bored with it,
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I first started collecting records, I was 13 and there was this record store by the Frankton Railway tracks, actually where Keith McMillan's guitar place is. And this guy said...
famous place.
Yeah, that's what it is for our town.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's lovely. Famous in your town. Like,
but
Bristol, UK.
He mentioned to me that Dylan was a one-take guy, so I think there's recordings where he loved his denim Levi jackets like I do, where the rivet buttons are hitting the guitar and you can hear it.
Yeah, and you can hear it. And but never. Yes, I mean there are a few records where he's been. I think when he recorded "Oh Mercy" with Daniel Lanois, then Daniel Lanois, sometimes you've had producers, then they would push him to do more takes. But I don't think they got anything better than I think left to his own devices. He kind of does, because I think, interestingly, his view of those songs is that they are, and famously, if you go and see him, he's like to mangle his classics, But you see, he doesn't see it as mangling. He just sees that recording is what it sounded like on that day, with those, And then if I play it tomorrow, it's going to be different. It might have a different tempo. Might easily have different lyrics. Classic. There's famous examples of if we get to Blood on the Tracks, where he went and re-recorded half the album, and and if you listen to live versions of Tangled Up in Blue, they've got all different words to what's on the record, because his view of it is that that they're my songs. I can do what I like with them. One, and two, to just play them the same way like they were recorded is just that's a pointless exercise.
We've talked about this before. They're famous for him and Neil Young, possibly Van Morrison, showing up to concert, and the whole everyone wants to hear Old Man, Heart of Gold, Mr. Tambourine Man, all the hits, and they'll do a whole show of just new songs.
Just it's the last
half the audience is like, okay, this is kind of cool. The other half's like, radio listeners, what's going on? I want my money back.
And of course, if you go back to 1960, get your money back. Right. But if you go back to 1962, it's all new. Yeah. So when the majority, you're going out and you're playing. If you think about it, you go out and play "Blowing in the Wind," "Masters of War," and all those things. At some point, they're new songs that you've not recorded, and you go out and play them to an audience. And you're relying on them to, and I think that. And I've said this on here before, that Pink Floyd toured "Dark Side of the Moon," great chunks of it for a year before they recorded it.
Oh wow!
They went out and So it was quite usual to tour and play songs live before you recorded them. And I think that so that playing. I mean, if you listen to Led Zeppelin at the BBC. That when they go into "Stairway to Heaven," there's like no audience reaction at all, because it's a new song and nobody's heard it. There's not, that thing. You get used to that kind of, the first few notes of "Stairway" ring out across a stadium, the crowd erupts.
Yeah,
this is nothing of the sort. Nothing happens at all. These people are just sitting there going, "Oh, look, here's a nice little acoustic number now," kind of thing. And they have no idea, because it's not history to them. It's new. So
when you have the machine behind you, which is a big record label like Atlantic or Columbia, and then you have the marketing, the build-up, the song, the radio airplay, the promo single, then the album, and then the concert, it's like, whoa, So people are definitely controlled. But I've actually written 4 periods here, and you'd be able to explain this better than me, Simon.
Yeah.
So the first period's acoustic, the second period's electric,
Yeah.
the third period he touches on country, and the final period, I think, which would be the blood on the tracks.
Well, we could talk about. I too have got it into kind of. I didn't quite divide it up like that. What I did was I said to myself, and I'll show these because I think it's worth talking about, that I think about Dylan as doing things in threes, right? So I discount the first album as being, but these three albums, so Freewheeling, The Times They Are Changing, and Another Side. So yeah, these three albums are what I agree with you, are what I would call his folk, his folk period. So particularly Blowing in the Wind and you've got, and also Times They Are Changing, you've got Times They Are Changing, Ballad, Hollis Brown, God on Our Side, One Too Many Mornings. These are quite these are protest songs and kind of civil rights songs, stuff like that. He then moves into on the Times They Are Changing. No, Another Side. So this has still got.
Is it the half electric,
move.
half acoustic?
No, this is not. No, this is not. This is still all acoustic.
Okay.
So, it's still got chimes. It's got Chimes of Freedom on it. Now, I would say that Chimes of Freedom is particularly a transitional song because I think it's a pointer from the way he goes into much more kind of metaphysical. There's an influence with Rimbaud and Verlaine and those French metaphysical poets. And Good Morning, Great Vanzini. How you doing? And so that's a pointer. But these three albums are of a piece in terms of their production, in terms of their instrumentation, and in terms of what Bob is doing. Yeah. So as I said, this one is a bit of a signpost to what comes next. So those three. Then you've got. And I think, blimey, then you've got what I would call the second classic with the second three, the trees, which is Bringing It All Back Home, Highway 61, and Blonde on Blonde. So he goes electric. So half of it is acoustic and half is electric. But the acoustic side is very much a kind of, much more metaphysical. The word is much, much more obscure. It's not clear what the meanings are. Much more they're all longer songs as well. So Mr. Tambourine Man, of course, Gates of Eden, It's All Right, Ma, Baby, and It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, which is clearly a message to the to the folk fraternity to say, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm doing something else, And obviously the side one with Subterranean Homesick Blues and all that electric stuff, Maggie's Farm, all those things, which are all electric. That's all with a band, Bruce Langhorne and Subterranean Homesick Blues with the famously with the film with the cards. He's standing in the alleyway flicking them off as the song plays, and there's Allen Ginsberg in the back, kind of thing. That all points to a different, completely different place. And then obviously you get Highway 61, with opening with Like a Rolling Stone. I mean,
wow.
That snare shot that Bruce Springsteen said kicked open the doors of your mind, later on.
And now we're getting into the fringe element of his influence with the Mike Bloomfield, the Paul Butterfield.
Well, this is where they come in, really, basically.
And the band a bit later next year.
Clearly. The other thing I'd say about this is that this is 64, I think. Yeah. So obviously this mirrors what he was doing live. Wow. So he would go out and do the first half. He would do acoustic. So he'd do 45 minutes or whatever acoustic, and then he would go off and he'd come back on and do band, with the Hawks kind of thing.
And did the motorcycle accident have an impact on his career? It did, didn't it? It sort of.
Well, it did have an impact on his career in several ways. We'll get to that, but I think that the first thing is it enabled him. I think the effects of the motorcycle crash have been over-exaggerated. Right? Okay. There's never been a clear explanation of just how badly injured Bob was. I think that Bob used it as a way of getting out of getting out of another world tour, because he'd just done a world tour with in '66. And I don't know if you've seen any of there's a film, D.A. Pennebaker, the guy who did No Direction Home, made another film of that tour. And there's clips on the internet and stuff like that of, them when they played live. Amazing live. They took their own PA and kind of went round. 66. They took their own PA. There's some interviews on YouTube with a guy who did it. And he's there in the gig. He's still bloody soldering things together while they're playing their first gigs. So all the kit and all the gear and all the PA, he put it together and he took it with him. So they went to Australia and they went to, they went all around, and of course to the UK, where famously, we'll get onto it, is they recorded this.
Oh wow!
The famous Albert. Well, it's called the Royal Albert Hall gig. And this is the famous one where somebody shouts out Judas. Yeah, this. When
traitor,
they come off with it, traitor, Judas. Someone very clearly. There's a bit of a lull before the last thing. Judas, and Dylan's like, he comes up there. He obviously goes, what? So he comes up there. He says, "I don't believe you. You a liar." And he turns away, and you hear it. I'm gonna swear. He says to the band, "Play fucking loud," like really fast, and then they just absolutely crash into Like a Rolling Stone. It's one of the seminal moments of rock. It makes the hair on the back of my head stand up, even thinking about it, because it is just that confrontation between artist and audience, encapsulated in a 10 seconds or whatever it is. That thing about Dylan, his own singular artistic vision. I'm going where I'm going. I don't care. What you do, what you call me, where you go. You may want me to still be the folk singer, and in some ways, what they missed, of course, is he still is, because he still does the first half of acoustic stuff.
But and you got to admire him, because he's not pigeonholed by a record company or a songwriting board saying, "Let's here's a bubblegum hit, sing it." And but while you're at it, get yourself a James Dean haircut, please.
I mean, that thing about, and I've said it on here before, but that I cannot. I wonder if anybody in the Brad or something like that who plays like that. Can you imagine every single night you go out and people boo the second half? I mean, it's just like, and you still keep doing it. I mean, you've got to have a kind of, I think you've got to have a special kind of psyche to dig into, to be able to do that, where you go out and clearly people are just booing. I think there's a certain amount of herd mentality in this, but people hear it's going to be booing, so they go and boo. It's kind of Pavlovian response to it. Horny cat. But I think to be able to do that, to go out and play, and every single night for people to boo you, and to be able to carry on and do it. I mean, that speaks volumes of the single-mindedness and the singular artistic vision that Dylan has of himself and what he wants to do. Amazing.
And to a lesser extent, and it was a blessing in disguise. And you mentioned Bruce Springsteen having that audition. Steve Ray Vaughan in 1982 or 1980 at the Montreux, the whole audience said basically, we're here to hear acoustic blues. And he rocks up saying, "I'm from Texas and we play loud." And it wasn't about 10,000 people in the audience, but all it took was 2 people in the audience to say, "Listen, this guy's got what it takes," which was either David Bowie, John Hammond. I get them. So
David Bowie got him on his Let's Dance, didn't he?
Yes, and introduced him to John Hammond, which is full circle, with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
So with that, sorry, you go, Simon.
No, I was going to say, that would be my second, my second 3, the great triumvirate of records, and I think that you can, that these are the greatest, some of the greatest albums ever made. I mean, absolutely. I will, you may not like them, and that's different, but I think that just to show you what they see, I got this as well, which is it's called Passed Over Rolling Thunder. And basically, side 1 is the electric set from the 65 Newport Folk Festival when he went electric.
Oh wow!
And there's some other bits on there, which is really cool. But that I would say that then there's a kind of low key period. So the motorcycle crash period, where he produces. I mean, I think these are brilliant albums actually. But John Wesley Harding is a fantastic record. I mean, it's not like Blonde on Blonde. It's just. I mean, famously, he went and recorded it in Nashville with just Bob Dylan, Charlie McCoy, Kenny Buttrey, and Peter Drake, steel player, just the three of them, basically a trio. And he went back and he played it to Robbie Robertson. It's like demos. And Robbie Robertson, for all of whatever else, had the presence of mind to say, you know what, don't do anything with that. It's brilliant as it is. Put it out. As an album.
Beer can, yes. Stella.
Yeah, it's this this is a fantastic record, but it's a very low key record. I mean, it's a. I mean,
and
typical.
Here's actually
these people on the front. See these people on the front, right? One of them's I can't remember which one. One of them's a bloke who just came round to fix the fence.
Actually, that album's famous for two reasons. Obviously, all along the Watchtower, Jimi Hendrix.
Indeed, yeah.
But a lot of people don't notice that Judas Priest got their name from that. What does it say?
Frankie Lee and the Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So, So he obviously did that. That was his post motorcycle crash. As I said earlier, I don't think that the motorcycle crash enabled Dylan to get out of yet, because I think there was a lot of the '66 tour there's a lot of drugs and stuff, and I think he'd sort of got into heroin a bit, and he just got married. You see, he married Sarah, and so basically it was a way of he had this, and I think it was a minor accident. He might have spent a couple of days in hospital or whatever, but I don't think it was a terrible kind of he was. But he used it as an excuse to get off the train. No, he used it to get off the train. Well, it was life changing, but he used it to get off the train, and they went up to Woodstock and lived in Woodstock, and of course, wrote and did this, the Basement Tapes. Of which there are. This is
which have just
the original
released on Spotify.
Yeah, well, there's like 135 songs.
Wow.
This is only just a few of them, but if you remember that quite a lot of people had hits off the back of those, like the Mighty Quinn, Manfred Mann, was it Wheels of Fire? Done by what's he called? Brian Auger. Wheels on Fire and all of that. But I don't know if the Birds did the Birds do anything off of here. I can't remember. Yeah. But anyway, they they.
I tell you that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that Nashville Skyline's something special.
Come back to Nashville Skyline.
Everybody obviously talks about Lay Lady Lay, but the version of with Johnny Cash of The Girl from the North Country is just unbelievable.
It's my favourite song.
Unbelievable.
Have you heard? Bob Dylan appeared on the Johnny Cash show together, and they did One Too Many Mornings. Have you ever heard One Too Many Mornings with Johnny Cash?
Yeah.
What's brilliant about anybody who says Dylan can't sing, right? You just play them that, because what happens every time? Well, what happens every time they come in for a verse and they do alternate verses? Yeah, that they change the key, right?
Yeah.
Now, classically, you would go, well, Johnny Cash is a better singer than Bob Dylan. Yeah, right. So Johnny Cash has to go, he has to go in the original pitch, then drop down to the pitch. Dylan, straight in, whatever that key is in. Absolutely straight in, on the money. Anybody says Dylan can't sing, you just play him that. Because that's a killer piece of singing, be able to do that, just straight in. But
that follow-up album, that Self-Portrait wasn't necessarily a dud, but it was overlooked, wasn't it?
Well, again, it's Dylan being willful, and just, obviously got off the gravy train, the train, the mad sort of train a bit, but he started to do his own thing, This obviously, this is country before country, really. It's a fantastic record. And he sings beautifully on it and stuff. I said last week they'd said recommend a Bob Dylan album, and I said, well, you've greatest hits, obviously, but actually, if you want an introduction to Dylan, this is a really good introduction to Dylan.
It's awesome. It's almost like the Proverbs in the Bible. Yeah,
beautiful. It's a beautiful song.
15 years later, my uncles are big onto that album, Infidels, and then that other album, Tight Connection to My Heart.
Yeah,
I mean, what an amazing song. But
we can get into that period as a thing. But obviously I picked this one out. Planet Waves. This has got because this is the first record he's made officially with the band. So he never made an official record with the band in the '60s. Robbie Robertson played and stuff, but not all of them did. But this is the one, obviously, with the Forever Young on it as well. This is probably the best known song. It's really cool. But
Rod Stewart did a version, or
did he do a version? He might have done. Might well have done.
Yes, he did.
Lots of people have, but it's kind of so that's with the band, so it's kind of thing. But Carl, getting into what you said earlier, and interestingly, that I would say period 3, where this threes thing, in '74 he comes out with one of the greatest albums ever. I'm blood on the tracks. I will brook.
They called it the breakup album. Is that right?
Yeah, but. For one or two, like Idiot Wind probably is about that, but I think it's dangerous to just pin it on one thing. I mean, obviously those things have a view, but around that time there's a different view on it altogether. That Dylan started painting, and obviously self-portrait has got painting on, but he went to this guy and they studied kind of cubism. So he studied that thing where you have
abstract.
Not abstract, but where you look at something and you've got all the different faces of it in one go. So, and if you listen to Tangled Up in Blue, it's a sort of a lyrical version of that, in that he starts off with he, and then he'll do I. So he swaps the what's it called? Not the genders. Goes from the first person to the third person, and and that's really because that's like the song equivalent of doing that cubism painting thing. So so you start looking at you look at one face, then you look at this bit, look at the top here. So he's going from me to he to I to to her, to you. But that's obviously an influence from this painting thing, apparently, that he did. So it's not only about, and I would say that things like, Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts clearly is not about breaking up. It's a kind of Western story, fantastic Western. I love it. That Western story. I mean, so some of them I would say that Idiot Wind is an amazing kind of howl of rage and sort of thing. It's just unlike anything else that anybody had ever done before.
It was an introspective album, and I think what's happened over the years, and it's something that music journalists tend to do, is they perpetuate these rumours that people have heard about it being a breakup album, and it was, messages to his wife at the time. But from my limited understanding, it was the beginning of Bob Dylan's serious introspective period. And I'm glad that you mentioned about the painting, because I saw a video a couple of years ago where they're talking about that, and it's interesting how painting becomes this thing for musicians and songwriters, Simon and Carl, that it gives them a different way of looking at things, because they become observers in a different way than that they had done previously. So it enhances their songwriting, which I think is interesting, because the genius level is taken up to another level, and it certainly begins with that album, all recorded in open tunings. It's a masterpiece.
Wow.
Yeah. That's right, and obviously went up and recorded it. Half the songs, then re-recorded half the songs. With a different set of musicians. He didn't think it quite worked. Changing some of the lyrics as well.
Something that he wanted to do. It had nothing to do with.
He just wanted to do it, didn't he? Didn't think it worked.
Or the producers, or the or the management.
And the alternate versions are fantastic. In fact, where is it?
My battery's about to run loose, about to drain.
See on here is the old. Plug it in then.
But if I plug in my phone, then I have to take out the what are these called? The earpiece.
Oh, the headphones.
Yeah.
No, you'll be fine. Plug it in.
Plug it in
okay,
and
cool.
shout. That's all right.
Yeah,
You'll be all right.
you'll be okay.
Okay, all right. I'll
So
get
this bootleg, what I have, whisper it, has side 3 has alternate versions of Lily Rose with the Jack of Hearts. If you see Say Hello, you're a big gunner, an idiot wins. So the alternative recordings for it, which is pretty cool. I think it's worth also saying that around this time, obviously Dylan went on the Hard Rain tour, with a whole variety of people, including Mick Ronson on guitar, which sounds a bit anomalous, but seemed to fit in well. But obviously, taking, Sarah Dylan came on tour with it, and also Joan Baez.
Wow.
And he made the film Renato and Clara about, and you have to say that you bring your ex-lover and your nearly ex-wife on top. Sounds a bit weird to me. What do I know? But I think just going back to the 3 things. So obviously you come out with that, you did, which is and then he did some reason I couldn't find it, but Desire, of course, was another classic Dylan song. Fantastic stuff. And I'm voting for, because this is one of my Street Legal, which is one of my favourite Dylan albums. Now, a lot of people go, "Oh, this is Dylan. He's got a big band and he's gone a bit mainstream, blah 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 blah." He's got like a sax player and he's got lots of. But I think this is a great record. I really do. I like this a lot, and I like the companion piece to it, which is Live at the Budokan.
Wow,
they're quite big, man. They're quite smooth, if you like. But actually, I love this record. I played it the other day, and having not played it for a long time, and I thought, this is such a great record.
I'm an idiot, because when it comes to like your Bruce Springsteen, your Bob Dylan, your Van Morrison, your Neil Young, unfortunately, I just cherry picked their classic period.
That's fine.
My uncles have a lot of that stuff, and I will learn about it when I get a bit more, I guess, maybe mature and a bit more relaxed, and maybe have a pipe or a cigar.
Smoking a thoughtful pipe. Yes, it's been outmoded these days.
But I remember all those album covers as a kid growing up, and I totally agree. So yeah, what a foundation, a body of work, unbelievable.
Already, and that's only up to the
and a typical artist, a chameleon, changes
changes all the time. Yeah. I mean, I think that Andrew, you asked earlier about when Bob Dylan turned into a pop star. I mean, I think that really is around like 65, really. Bringing it all back home, Mr. Tambourine Man, as a hit for the Byrds, and that's when. And 66, that world tour where he is as hip looking as he's ever going to be. He looks amazing with those. Where is it?
Ray-Ban Wayfarers, the polka dot shirt.
Yeah, all of that polka dot shirt, and all of those.
The motorcycle jacket, the leather jacket.
John
that kind of look is where he's starting to do it and things, and that's Albert Grossman's wife, by the way.
The what? Sorry.
The woman is Albert.
You can't say that. I got censored from my my company about that word.
Okay.
What, Albert Grossman's wife?
No, Jufro.
I tell you who had one was Mike Bloomfield had one. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But you can see, you can see on this. You see there's that Robert Johnson King of the Delta Blues record.
That's correct.
And things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of things in here. Fallout.
What's his name? Lyndon Johnson, the president. Time magazine. Cat.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd be happy that he's got a cat there too, Carl.
Got a cat. He's got a cat. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, this is the period where he, and obviously this period as well, where he's starting to wear really cool gear and
Triumph t-shirt,
the shades and the Triumph t-shirt, of course.
That's an English motorcycle company, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the British motorcycle companies. But so I think that's when he goes through that 65, 66 period. Andrew, is where he's in his pop period, pop star, where the pop, that kind of fame thing with the US, where he goes through that. I mean, I think that he's always. Hi, Kubrick lover.
The thing for me about Bob Dylan is that I'm lucky that I was young enough to be around when he was, releasing albums that were in the top 10. Joker Man, for example, I fell in love with that song Joker Man, and that's what forced me to go out and buy the record. And then going back myself.
That's from the Infidels, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great record.
Now, when was that? 84,
85. 85?
85? Yeah.
Infidels is 83.
Oh, wow.
It was around that period. And I remember sort of going back from that period back to, those albums that you've just presented us, Carl. And
did you
not really understanding what was going on until making connections with other artists. So Bob Dylan never really made any sense for me, only in relation to, for example, when John Lennon was talking about Bob Dylan. And I was into Neil Young big time, so people were making comparisons between Bob Dylan and Neil Young, saying together they are the best North American poets and songwriters, along with Bruce Springsteen. So that's when the connections were being made for me. And then again with the advent of the internet, where you could go and see a lot of these things. That's the connection for me with Bob Dylan. Is the relationship that he has with other artists.
Look at that, pop star Bob Dylan.
Yeah, I've got a little list that I wrote.
Oh, we can hear you. We can hear you. That's good.
Yeah, if there's an audience that's listening, obviously Blowing in the Wind, Mr. Tambourine Man, the Byrds did a version. Yeah. It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. I think Van Morrison did a version. Yeah. Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I mean, when I think of that song, I don't think of Bob Dylan. I think of Brian Ferry.
Yeah.
I Shall Be Released. When I think of that, I think of the band.
Me too.
Mama, You've Been on My Mind. When I think of that, I think of Rod Stewart. Yeah. Knocking on Heaven's Door. I generally think of either Eric Clapton or Guns N' Roses. I'll give $20 who can do Axl's nasal tone on the chorus.
I'll give it 5, but I wouldn't buy it.
All Along the Watchtower goes without saying, Jimi Hendrix.
Easy.
I only found this out today. I'm glad we're doing this show. I'll Be Your Baby Tonight, UB40.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, latterly, go on, Carl, keep going.
Obviously, Rolling Stone, Jimi Hendrix did an amazing version at the Live at the Monterey. The live version, obviously, but obviously the Stones picked up on it mid-90s and used it as the cover of the opening song of their tours. Don't Think Twice, It's All Right was covered by many artists, and It Ain't Me, Babe. Johnny Cash got a huge following from that song with the duet with June Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just touched the surface of mainstream artists doing his songs, but
and I think
Wikipedia there's a list about Sky High.
Yeah. My favourite one is actually that is what's it? What's it like? The Adele song, the song that Adele covered. When the rain is falling in your face, when the whole world is. Now I heard. You see, I was on one of these, isn't it? Some Time Out of Mind or one of these. And obviously I'd heard it, and I remember seeing her do it on the telly and thinking, I know that song. Why do I know that song? And kind of racking my brains as to. And thinking, where do I know that song? And then realising, of course, it's a Dylan. And wait a minute, it's bloody Dylan, isn't it? And thinking, well, I never did. That's You know, that Make You Feel My
Yeah.
Love. It's you know, it's a kind of, it took me ages. It took me like a day to remember to figure out where it came from. You know, as a kind of thing. So I think it's really good. But just going back to carrying on with this. But you know, I don't. Do you know this record? Do you know this record? See, this is his maligned 3-album religious period. This is by the way, this is a great record. Okay, you know, the lyrics. You either, you know, I mean, you know, there's no messing about on this album. You know, lyrically, it is uncompromising.
Cover.
But yeah, lyrically uncompromising. Yeah, but it's got Mark Knopfler on it. It's produced by Barry Beckett and Jerry Wexler. You know, this is a great record.
There's the famous one called
yeah, you've got to
Saved.
serve somebody. Yeah,
Saved.
Saved. Well, Saved is after this. Saved is the next one, which is not so good, to be honest. I don't think as this, but it's a bit more of a, you know, you've got to be a fan to have. I don't have Saved, but this is a great record. Under any, you know, Got to Serve Somebody. I Believe in You. Slow Train Coming. I mean, there is some great stuff on here, yeah, and it's beautifully produced. Mark Knopfler's on it playing guitar. You know, it's a great record, worth a listen. You know, regardless of whether you're, you know, religious or not, I think it's, you know, what's great about it is that it's an uncompromising, you know, album and says what it says, and you know, and that's Bob Dylan. You know, it just, this is where I am. You're gonna get it. You know? I think that the one after it Saved It Not Good. Shot of Love is much better as the third in the trilogy, and contains Every Grain of Sand, which is one of Dylan's greatest songs. I mean, you know, undoubtedly that's one of his greatest songs, and that's worth checking out as well. So I go, but then after that, you know, it's like Infidels, and obviously Andrew, you came in. This is where you came in. Infidels after Shot of Love and Empire Burlesque. I didn't like Empire Burlesque. In fact, I got an alternative version of Empire Burlesque where all the I've got the songs, but not like they're produced on the record. So I never liked the production of that record. I thought there might be some decent songs on it, but I couldn't never get past the production, which I thought was terrible. And actually, I've got my friend Gerard, who's an old friend of mine, who's a real Dylanologist. He kind of introduced me to Dylan, but he has a group with the Blue Airplanes. But he gave me a copy of this sort of like, you know, which is completely different, which is much better record. But so I think that going back to the threes business, you know, he obviously went through like, you know, really until 15 years of not doing a great, you know, lot of stuff really. There's some interesting stuff in there if you're willing to delve. The two folk albums he did, Good As I've Been to You and World Gone Wrong, are worth checking out, but they're a bit more actually what he started off doing. They're mainly cover versions and just him playing acoustic guitar, pretty much. They're really good. I really like them, but they're kind of what you call 3-star albums in that they are niche interest, not. But then I go, you know, 2007, 6, 2000. He produces Time Out of Mind, which is a fan, you know, and then he produces. I might have got this wrong. Love and Theft and Modern Times. Yeah, these are another trilogy of great Bob Dylan records. You know, check them out. Later period Bob Dylan. I mean, absolutely brilliant. I love these, and I think they're fantastic. You know, obviously they are. You know, they're working. Working Man's Blues is a great record. You know, Make You Feel My Love is a great record. Highlands, long and, you know, typical Dylan, but worth checking out as well. And even hot off the presses, this is his latest. This is from this year, 3 months ago. It's a great record too. Really good. Contains like the 17-minute Murder Most Foul, which is fantastic about Bobby Kennedy's Jack Kennedy's assassination.
So he
Go on, say that again. Oh, have I lost you?
Carl.
Am I gone?
Carl.
Is Carl gone? Is he? He's turned his camera around. We can see things that no man should ever see. You still there, Carl? Only a bit. Turn your camera around. It's more fun seeing you.
So he's
there he is.
he's obviously. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hearing is probably
You're-
more important
hear
than
me?
seeing you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We can hear you.
Hello?
We can
Yep,
hear
we
you.
can hear you.
You can't hear us, I take it. You have gone frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you see us? Can you hear me, Mother? Is it rolling, Bob? They are. Absolute reference. Right, we'll carry. He'll come back in a minute. So I think that that Dylan, even now, age 79, let's not forget, this is really good. This record, is it? As I say, Murder Most
Brian.
Foul is an astonishing piece of 17 minutes of kind of context about Jack Kennedy's assassination, which is well worth a listen. A fantastic instrumentation as well on it. You're back.
Yeah. No, I as soon as I took the earpiece out and plugged into the wall, I had problems. So I've got a bit more juice now.
Cool.
Carl whirring around. I've missed it.
Hey, Nelson.
Nelson,
Yep,
how
see-
you doing?
You can see me and hear me now.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
no worries.
So where I moved to, it said trouble with the router. So
okay.
yeah. So I had to basically what I have to do is just run this juice out till it's done, and then I have to go. Unfortunately, go.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Probably got 20 minutes left, maybe, or 15.
Yeah.
But
Okay, well,
yeah, I remember my uncles had those seed. What was that one you mentioned about love theft?
Love and Theft, Modern
Yeah.
Times, and Time Out of Mind.
They raved about them.
Yeah, they're really good. They are really good. Yeah,
Mm.
fantastic records. So later period, Dylan. Yes, completely. But again, another set of 3 songs, 3 albums that you produced that are absolutely tremendous.
So he's in his mid-70s.
Hi, Brian Spalding. Bob Dylan is 79. He's 80 next May.
So as far as official releases, including live albums, how big's his catalogue? 40 albums, 30 albums?
About 35 albums, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Out.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that what's interesting about it is that the albums tell only a bit of the story. I mean, he's got this whole bootleg series, which is basically re-releasing things that weren't released at the time. Great, it's a great series of them, and some of them are dozens of 10 CDs and amazing amounts of material that is in the archives and stuff. And I think that kind of curating it and releasing it for the fans when he's alive is fantastic. It's
he famously appeared at Hamilton, of all places, about 3-4 years ago at Claudeland Showgrounds. Not known for its acoustics, unfortunately. This place, New Zealand, unfortunately, doesn't get it right. The Clarence Street Theatre would have been probably a better venue. But I heard that the reviews were mixed, very mixed. The sound and his selection of songs.
Yeah, I saw him about, when did I last see him? About maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. I really enjoyed it. When I saw him, what he did was he did a new song. So he did something out of one of these albums, and then he would go back and do a classic kind of thing, and he would go back and forth between a classic song and then a new song, a classic song, a new song, which seemed to work. He very much had Charlie Sexton playing guitar on it, very much a kind of very much a kind of rock band. It was quite rock, It wasn't full sound, 2 guitars, least guitar, and then obviously they have
I heard about
players.
That tour was a success. So Charlie Sexton's got a brother called Will Sexton, and they're from Austin, Texas.
Yeah. But they've they've done. I mean, he started this kind of this kind of the thing called the Never-Ending Tour, which he's been going on since '88, I think, and they've done he does 100 gigs a year, something like that, 120 gigs a year, and they just keep rolling, keep rolling, Bob, and he absolutely symbols. But
ground beef.
Yeah, 120 gigs a year, and he's been doing, so they've done like that, over 1,000 gigs easily, in that period, and he just keeps, he keeps doing it. He keeps going out, keeps doing. Obviously not now, but and even though he's getting quite shaky,
does he generally plays a Martin or a Gibson acoustic?
I think he had a Martin. I think earlier.
Yeah.
I don't think he plays very much guitar now. I think Brainy keyboards. He sits at a piano, kind of electric piano thing.
Wow.
I think mainly he sings. He doesn't do much. I don't know whether he's got arthritis in the hands or whatever, but seemingly he does not much playing and just does the singing, really. But he's still going out as a man of nearly 80 and doing it. It's it's become a singular thing that he does, and not everybody gets it. I think you get him on a good night, or not such a good night, and the voice will be croaky and a bit phlegmy and a bit, but it's a bit like, he keeps going out and doing it and doesn't turn it in, because that's part of his life, is the reinterpretation of those songs in new lights every night.
I watched one of his interviews, and I could tell that he was very comfortable in his own skin, and he was his own man. He was completely
his own man. Yeah. What period did you want to watch? You watch some of them from the '60s. There's fantastic. There's one. There's one with what's the other day with a guy from, I think it's Time magazine or Newsweek or something. One of the two. But anyway, and Dylan is just like laying into it, going, "You don't know who I am, but I know who you are." It's like, really giving him the feel like. And you're thinking to yourself, blimey. And what's funny is that he's like 24 or something. He's like 25 years old. But some of those 60s news conferences are just hilarious. If he's feeling in a good mood, like somebody asks him, "What advice do you have for the younger generation?" It's like, he's like, "What do I do with that as as something?" So he just says, "Keep a good head and always carry a light bulb." Which is just a bit of a surrealist joke, really. But
what I found,
it all gets very lapped up. The prophet has spoken.
He's very dry. He's very intelligent. He's cheeky and very cynical.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Brian, for checking us out. As you can see, it's all about Bob Dylan today. That could be anything. But yes, I mean, very much, his own. But those '60s press conferences, where, I mean, it's amazing that I saw there's one where it's kind of, he's got a television camera and he's up there on his own, and he's having a cigarette, and and then these people in press just blasting in with questions, and you think, okay, there's no PR, there's nobody kind of, he's just him on his own, age 24 or whatever it is, sitting up on his stage, being, already, being already touted as the voice of a generation, and spokesperson for a generation, and all of that stuff, and having to live up to that when you're 23, 24 years old, God, I mean, some of us can hardly get out of bed at 23, never mind being the spokesman for a generation. So I think he quite rightly brushed that aside and sent it away, because you can't. How can you be the spokesperson for a generation? The great prophet of a generation. It's like, God.
I guess in a way it was a blessing and a curse, because A, he was unique, and B, he had no competition. Who else was like him in the country or the world? So the reason why he was the reason why he was a spokesperson, because there was no other person like Bob Dylan. I mean, obviously you had the Leonard Cohen, who came along a little bit later, same sort of background, Jewish bohemian poet from Canada. The Donovan was in England, not quite the same impact. Possibly a few more drugs. Bob Van Morrison branched out as a solo artist. Neil Young had more of a hard rock influence, very Dylan-esque though. And then in closing, Bruce Springsteen, and to a lesser extent, Steve Earle.
Steve. Well, I mean, there are all those people who were the new Bob Dylan, weren't they? John Prine and and anybody. I mean, I think that. I mean, it's a good point about no Dylan. I think no, Van Morrison particularly. No Van Morrison. No Dylan, no Van Morrison kind of thing. In fact, I read a quote that said Van Morrison said that he heard one of Dylan. He heard Freewheeling in a record shop in Belfast, and he said it just was incredible because this guy clearly wasn't singing about the moon in June and all of that and getting away with it. The subject matter wasn't pop songs. It was it was a kind of mainstream thing, but it had ideas and it had a whole different perspective on a very serious set of things that were going on that time. That really blew Van Morrison's mind. And but really opened him up to the possibility of that music could be much more than just the moon in June. I want to hold your hand thing.
Look at Van. I mean, John Lee Hooker, them R&B rave ups to all of a sudden Astral Weeks.
Yeah. Kubrick Lover doesn't like Van Morrison. Kubrick Lover, how could you? Perhaps we'll do a show on the old
on a surface level too. Bob Dylan inspired a lot of other people to play music without digging deep and trying to understand his lyrics. A lot of people have said, well, if a guy can play a guitar like that and sing like that, I can too. No disrespect to Bob Dylan, but some of those albums aren't polished pieces, and that's one of the reasons why we love him, because he has that appeal.
Authentic.
So you can dig deeper if you want. And also, if it inspires someone to pick up a guitar and play, he's probably done his job too.
And he's not one of these. We talked about him being intelligent, but he's not so stupid where he's a snob where he plays lots of jazz chords and tries to be too clever. Basically, simple chord voicings and the occasional capo.
And I think never forget
that American scene. That troubadour, that romantic scene, and I think that's the thing for Bob Dylan. For me, it's the image that he has. It's that message that he wants to get across. That's what I love. It's this. Eric Clapton talks about it too. It's this one man up against the world with this guitar. We see it with the country guys, with Hank Williams, and we saw it with a lot of those black blues guys too, didn't we? Where they just walked into a honky tonk, or a bar somewhere, jumped up and sang songs. That's the power. That's the power for me. When I look at Bob Dylan, I see that. I think that's powerful.
That guitar and his voice and his pen and his paper is a weapon.
Yeah. Well, he's the old this machine kills fascists, isn't it? Which Woody Guthrie placed on his guitar. On his guitar,
Yeah.
Tom Morello has this guitar kills fascists on his guitar as well. But
wow.
So that very much that thing about one man with a guitar and the right words can change the world, and can hold an audience in his hand or whatever, and can that. Again, that thing of that the really great songs, you can strip them back. If you can do them on an acoustic guitar and one person singing, it's a great song. If it's if you strip it back and there isn't anything there because it's all about the edifice of production or whatever, then then that's not necessarily a great song.
We've got to give a hat to John Hammond, because record companies generally want to create a profit. They want to sell records. And they want handsome guys with handsome haircuts to appeal to vulnerable teenagers, mainly females. And the main topic being love. Bob Dylan changed that by saying,
But let's face it, he looks pretty cute on that. You know, that's a pretty cute photograph of Bob. I would go so far and say.
But
When you
he
say
made you,
they're kind of
he
like,
made you listen. You know, and when you got guys like Johnny Cash covering your songs and giants in the country western realm, and Peter, Paul, Mary, and the Beatniks, and Transatlantic, the Van Morrisons, and Bruce Springsteen being young teenagers, it's a massive impact.
Oh, you know, and I think that his impact is almost incalculable. I mean, everywhere you look, you know, every single singer-songwriter after Dylan, you know, that you can think of has been influenced in some way by Dylan. You know, and I think even people who are, you know, young singer-songwriters now contain, you know, do echoes of Bob. You know,
Absolutely.
I can think of there's a guy in the UK called Jake Bugg. I don't know if you've come across him.
No.
He'd had his most best known song is called Lightning Bolt, but you know he's got that kind of electric Dylan look. It's good.
Yep.
Are you cooking, Carl?
Or trying, yeah.
You're very.
Well, and once again, we talked about it before. There's a combination of the Bohemian beatnik, a bit of a rebel, and he, like Andrew said, he cultivated a certain look where I am me, don't mess with me, and this is what you see is what you get.
Completely, and you know, but having a see, there's a picture of Jake Bugg to give you some idea. You see what I mean? There's echoes there, isn't there?
They gave him an extra G to Bug. That's cool.
Yeah. That's his name, but he didn't. Yeah. What's the one thing we know about Bob Dylan? His real name's not Bob Dylan. What's the one thing we know about Jake Bugg? His name's Jake Bugg.
They gave him an extra G.
Get in.
Well, it's quite a clever marketing move because people say, "Yo, man, you got to check out Dylan. Check out Dylan."
Well, because you know, and he's still touring. People are still, you know, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2017, whatever it is, you know, 3 years ago. Yeah. You know, the only singer-songwriter ever, you know, really to have won it. And there's quite a lot of squabbling about whether he should have or not. But you know, the fact is they awarded it, you know, and no other rock artist, pop artist has ever been awarded that sort of accolade. Yeah, you know, when it goes to serious writers and things. And so, you know, that is the the benchmark of you know,
because a lot of those guys at your Donovans, we could go on about other artists. They sort of not necessarily peaked. They came, they performed, and then disappeared. Where Bob
came, saw, and disappeared.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is,
and there he was,
if anyone's
disappeared.
Serious about discovering Bob Dylan, if I can give one recommendation, it would be the Basement Tapes and the Bootleg series. There's a shitload of music there, and that's something that I've been working through in relationship to the study that we've been doing for Eric Clapton's Layla, and before that, Simon, we were talking about the influence that the band had on a lot of artists, and then you make that connection. Okay, what were the band doing around that same time when they were recording Big Pink? So they were hanging out with Bob Dylan. Yeah. So just listening to the album, you know, you can listen to it for 10, 15 minutes or for hours, and it's just fascinating. I love it. I think it's something that will get drawn out, and I think a lot of people, if they're serious about music, will probably re-release a lot of those songs.
Yeah. Welcome, Hobo Roadie. Nice one. Like the Tom Lehrer. Good work. I love Tom Lehrer. Fantastic. 88 string guitar. Do you know Tom Lehrer, Andrew? Do you know who Tom Lehrer is? Fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you know that you you can't underestimate his legacy and the what he's done and the influence he's had is yeah, Donovan's great, Ramsey. But it's he's the first of the new Dylans. But, as I say, I don't think you would overestimate his influence on generations of people, and even if it's secondhand, that you're taking what he did, particularly lyrically, and turning the world on its head. And the things from the mid '60s, early '60s, go back to Chimes of Freedom and things like that. Astonishing lyrical dexterity and literary quality to them that I don't think has ever been surpassed myself. I think is he? Is Carl still alive? I presume
yeah, well, look, I certainly have a lot of respect for Bob Dylan. The connections that he's made and the relationship that he has with a lot of musicians that I love and hey Arvin,
yeah,
and
Hi,
adore
Arvin.
and worship at their feet. Certainly have a lot of respect for Bob Dylan. Neil Young probably means a lot more for me personally as a music fan. But having said that, though, you can't deny the influence that Bob Dylan has. We keep hearing it, don't we? We keep reading it, we keep seeing it in videos and interviews, Simon, where they say he's a spokesperson for a generation. He certainly was. He was one of the guys that took people's thinking from black and white to colour. And Technicolor and
That's
3D, he gave that depth and richness. He motivated a lot of people for positive change. The civil rights movement, the war in Vietnam, had a connection to his songs. Whether or not those things were successful or not, we don't know. There's but the point was he was hugely influential. And I can't have enough respect for the guy other than say thank you, Bob Dylan.
No, I agree. I mean, and I think you're absolutely right that some of this is about personal taste. I love Bob Dylan. Absolutely. I've got, you can see, I've produced all these bloody records. Like I said, and there's a whole lot I've got that I didn't produce. I tried to stick to the 20 I thought were important. But I think that yes, that you cannot design his village. Whether you like him or not is a different thing. That and all music is personal, and whether it moves you and whether it's whether you find it interesting or whatever, then that's one thing. But understanding that he is at the very pinnacle of what rock music is, and he changed it and he molded generations of singers after him. And he changed the way that they thought about how to write songs, what to write about, and what way to write about them in, and that they could be literary, and I know Kubrick Lover doesn't like Neil Young, but I agree. Neil Young, Van Morrison, you listen to Van Morrison's kind of Into the Mystic or Astral Weeks or something like that, clearly those, lyrics are, without Dylan having done Desolation Row and those sorts of things, which are astonishingly kind of surreal, imagery songs that, that Van Morrison wouldn't have felt in any way confident about doing those sorts of things.
Oh, well.
I don't know whether he would have even done them.
Yeah, well, there's a connection to the show that we're going to do tomorrow with Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, in 75, there's the imagery of the lyrics there that Page and Plant were constructing and presenting to us as music fans has a link to Dylan. I'm convinced of it. I'm convinced.
Oh, absolutely. That in that all that folk stuff from Jimmy Page did is Dylan influence for sure, and Robert Plant. Absolutely. The list isn't endless, isn't it? Of those people, that even if it's not overt, I think that even if you go, I would go so far as to say that people like, you wouldn't necessarily make a real connections. But people like ELP, Yes, and all those people, all that kind of, the Yes stuff, which is very sort of, otherworldly kind of, that John Anderson, that's still, without Dylan, showing that, you could write about whatever you wanted in any way, shape or form. That, that Yes, with, as you listen to, Fragile or something like that, or Close to the Edge and things like that, that there is the influence. There's still that Dylan influence in those things. ELP and whatever else, that musically not so much, I would say, but lyrically, that opening the doors about what you could write about and the way that you could write about
with,
it.
Tom Petty and Roy Orbison and the Travelling Wilburys, in the late 1980s.
Again, yeah, magnificent, yeah.
That was a huge album. George Harrison, and if you see the footage there, again on YouTube, aren't we blessed to have YouTube with all the stuff that we couldn't get at the time, and the way that they're interacting and discussing and talking and constructing these songs, and the way that Bob Dylan is just sitting back and he just sort of puts in one sentence here or agrees here or and they all turn around and they all stop what they're doing and they look at Bob. It's like
and I think he enjoyed that, didn't he? A lot, that Wilburys thing.
Oh, he loved it. He loved it. He's George Harrison speaks about that time with fondness as well, and Tom Petty. So again, look at the connection that he had with Tom Petty, who's a great North American songwriter, observer of life.
Yeah. I saw
poet.
The previous time I've seen Dylan before 5 years ago was on the tour with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and Roger McGuinn from the Byrds. Yes. So Roger McGuinn came out and did some songs on his own, and then he did some songs backed up by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, which is a bit like having the Byrds back together. And then Tom Petty did some stuff. And then Tom Petty backed up Bob Dylan. That was great. Yeah. And that was the night I don't know if I said it on here. That was the night that famously the UK was hit by a hurricane. And famously a woman phoned up the BBC and said, I understand there's a hurricane coming. And the weatherman on the BBC, a man called Michael Fish, said, I can assure you, madam, there is not a hurricane coming. 10 hours later, there's a hurricane. And I drove back from London to...
Was that 1987?
Yeah, 87, yeah. I drove back from London through the hurricane, thinking, why is it so windy?
So I saw him on that tour in
Hey, Steve Anderson.
And they it was just Bob Dylan and Tom Petty. It wasn't Roger.
No, Roger
wasn't
McGuinn
on that leg. But the venue that we watched, the concert was the sound was horrible. It was you couldn't hear.
Was it?
It was just,
right.
Yeah, it was disappointing. But I spoke to some people since who were closer to the stage, and they said it was good. But Bob Dylan, from the reports that I've read, Simon, was in his cantankerous mood.
yeah. Which I'm sure that. Well, I think that period was a bit of a lost period for Dylan. I think that if you read Chronicles, Volume 1, which is his autobiography, that he talks about that period, recording with Daniel, but not really. Having to rework out what his role as an artist is and how he performed live and all sorts of, how he would do it, and I think that you obviously saw him a bit in that period, I think, where he was quite lost in many ways. But you're quite quiet, Andrew. You're all right.
All
better
right.
than
Well,
it was. You could turn up it, but it doesn't matter.
What we might do is we might wrap this up then, Simon, and I better fix my system.
No, it's all right. So it's fine sound-wise. You don't have any of the crackle. You're just a bit quiet. You could turn yourself up a bit, which is all right.
But no. So
Who's we've
got a show tomorrow. That might be a part 2 show. We'll see how we go because Simon and I and Brad guys are doing the Rankin the album, Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti, and we're going to talk about the songs. So depending on how deep we go on that might be part 2, Simon, because there's a lot of songs on that album.
Really? Yes. It's a double. I've got morning, Steve Anderson. How you doing? Hope you're good. No snow on the southern tip of Vancouver Island yet.
No snow. Oh, okay.
No snow.
Look, Simon, I appreciate the fact that you've given us Bob Dylan for beginners. The next presentation that you're going to give us is Bruce Springsteen for beginners. So we're getting a little bit close to Christmas. So if you guys are all good, Simon might do that before Christmas for you guys. So if you guys leave thumbs up and get your friends to subscribe to the channel, we'll make sure that Simon does that for you.
Yeah. Yes, and Kubrick lovers quoting some Dylan. Just cool. Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, see? Yes. And thanks, Hobo Roadie and Kubrick lover, Steve Anderson, and for joining, guys. Arvin, of course. Arvin, hope you're good. And who else did we have? Great Vanzini, Brian Spalding as well. Thanks, Brian, for joining. It's good to see you. Got Nelson, of course, Nelson Rodriguez. And Brad, and who else do we have? D-Tube, didn't we? D-Tube at the top, I think. So thanks all for joining. Hope you enjoyed that. And D-Tube and Sonia, of course, Sonia.
And Carl. and Carl.
And Carl.
Carl
and the return of the mighty Carl, which is great.
The
Carl the cat and the saucepans.
Yeah. Hey, Julia, sorry. We're wrapping up.
Julia.
The good news is that we'll be on tomorrow with Brad discussing Led Zeppelin. So if you want to tune in at about maybe 2 hours from now, earlier, you'll be able to catch the beginning of the show because we're going live at 6.
Which is 5 for me.
Yeah, but Simon doesn't sleep, so that's okay.
Yeah,
and
Russ,
we pay him
Russ
good
never
money,
sleeps.
So don't feel sorry for him.
Really? When? you realise, of course, you said that live now.
Oh, well.
You see now everyone now. I have an audience. I have witnesses in the audience say money's coming my way. I don't think so.
Oh yeah.
Dear.
So we're doing Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti tomorrow. So we're going to do a presentation on that, go through the songs. I have to tell you, Simon, I've been listening to that for the last week and a half, and I've fallen in love with that album. Wow.
You can never have too much Led Zeppelin, in my and that's not too much Led Zeppelin. It's a fantastic record. I love that,
But I couldn't help just make connections between that and Bob Dylan. I just, because I've been listening to, there's something going on there in the 70s. There's just something in the water with these bands. So, yeah.
Well, I think the world is small. The world was a smaller
tomorrow.
place then than it is now. Certainly in rock terms, and when you're at that upper echelon of things, it's
Awesome.
there's not that many people,
awesome.
But cool. But yes, thanks everyone. Julia, apologies, we're we're just wrapping up as you've arrived. But yeah, come tomorrow. Physical Graffiti will be on the turntable.
Yeah. Bring your rankings. And sorry about being half an hour late. Technical issues. So I'm going to go and get something to eat and then just go through and have a look and find out what's happening with my interface. All right, guys.
And, well, it's all right now. Andrew, you're all right now.
Oh, is it?
It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't want to waste half an hour tomorrow.
No. well, hopefully, guys, everyone in the chat, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming. Hope you liked it. Yeah. Yes. Great record. Brad. I'll see you tomorrow, Brad. Looking forward to it. Be really good.
Yeah, Brad. Yeah. Thanks, Brad. Thanks for dropping
by. Very cool.
For hanging out there in the chat.